Might have to close some things down here. Okay, we still have people coming on. All right, let me. I work off of.
Sorry, I was just wondering who just joined us on the Galaxy S20 Ultra 5G.
That's Danny.
Oh,
Danita.
Gotcha. Sorry, Jeannie, what were you saying? I interrupted.
No, I work off of 2 screens, so I'm trying to figure out, I'm trying to get the right one shared. And I think I have it. I just want to make sure. Let me present. Can everybody see this now? It says rock infrastructure. Thumbs up if you can see it. Everybody can see it. All right, good to go. So I'm excited to be here. I don't know about you guys. It's a little later here. I'm actually sitting on my porch in New Hampshire, and I'm here and excited to be here to talk about community infrastructure projects. And apparently we're going to start with some introductions. I had to squeeze the NCF logo into my little Polaroid picture, but I thought it would be really helpful. In a minute, I'll kind of give you guys an overview of my role and who I am, but I want to hear first who you guys are. So Julie, do you want to take us around the room? And I figured we'd just say, tell me who you are, what ROC or what organization or you're from, and in 15 seconds or less, tell me why you came to this session tonight.
Yeah, we can start with Park Plaza. I think that's the largest contingency.
Oh my goodness. We're so sorry. Okay, so you want us to know, what was this class, by the way? I forgot already.
Getting ready for infrastructure projects.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I have been on, so I did not go to bed till 9 o'clock last night from all the Zoom meetings. It just was a crazy place. So I'm not Timmy Seafeld with Park Plaza Cooperative. I'm the president, going on 11 years next year. So we are, we're pretty done with infrastructure actually, except for some like beautification and fencing, but you can't ever stop learning. So if there's anything that we hear from other people that maybe we could use or anything that we could offer for help, we're here for that.
Awesome.
And this is Bonnie behind me.
Hi, Bonnie.
Hi. You're supposed to say who you are, where you're from, and why you're in this class.
I'm Bonnie Johnson from Park Plaza Co-op in Freely. And I'm a treasurer. And I think I told you this the other day, I've been here for 20 years, but not on the board.
It feels like 20 years on the board though, right? Yeah.
And so I was interested in seeing what we're going to do tonight.
Great.
And we have Carlton.
Yeah, Carlton Dahl, Director at Large, Park Plaza. And, well, I like to learn things, and I like listening to you guys, so I'm here.
Great. Nice to meet you, Carlton.
Thank you.
Let's see. Danita's from Pamel Creek.
Yes, I'm here. I've been a resident only for a few months, and so I wanted to join the conference and get a whole bunch of information to be able to be a more intricate part of our community.
Awesome. And Bobby, who's also from Pamel.
Hi, I'm Bobby Grubb from Pamel Creek Estates in La Crosse, Wisconsin. I'm the board secretary, and I took the course to there's always something going on with infrastructure, so just learning what I can about it.
Great. Nice to meet you, Bobby.
And I think last but not least, we have Marjorie.
Hi, I'm Marjorie Gilsrud from Adelia Mobile Village, serving as the president. I'm also the ROC Association director for the East, South, and Midwest. And I'm here because besides wanting to learn and whatever, I thought it was important for me being in my role to be here to support my region.
Great. Do you want to introduce staff too? I think everybody knows everybody. Not 100% sure though. You'll have to tell me, Julie.
I think everyone knows everyone.
Okay,
Like
good.
Julie.
And is there somebody on the Galaxy S20?
I think that's Danita.
Yep, that's me, Danita.
Okay, awesome. You're on your phone too. Okay, awesome. Okay, well, great. I get to introduce myself. Julie loves my little slide here. I had a little fun with the picture, but so originally a few months ago, Victoria Clock asked me to come do this presentation, and I am a cooperative housing specialist with CDI, which is the Cooperative Development Institute, and we work with ROCs in all of the New England states, with the exception of New Hampshire, which is where I live, ironically. So I actually came into this work starting out in New Hampshire, and I came into this work because I am a resident leader and former board member at my co-op, which is the Exeter Hampton Cooperative in Exeter. And I essentially came into this work because of a major project, an infrastructure project we had done in my community. And tonight, what we're going to do is I'm going to kind of walk you guys through our story. And I know some of you have a lot of experience with infrastructure here on the call, but I can tell you this, I don't think you'll ever get bored of hearing stories of change. I think people often connect that way. But hopefully throughout the little presentation that I put together, I'm going to talk a lot about the structural components of infrastructure. Our community went through some major challenges, and when I came into the work, what I realized is that almost every project that you'll ever tackle has the same components to it. And I feel strongly that once you tackle one and you get that forward action and project structure going, the sky's the limit, right, Natividad? Like you said, like you're just looking at what's my next project, and it's overwhelming to get started, and especially if you get caught down on the muck. And hopefully tonight, something that I say will either A, stick with you, B, inspire you, or C, just entertain you. One or the other, I'm not sure. So again, I've been doing the work of the housing specialist this is actually my 8th year. Believe it or not, I haven't given up yet. I've worked probably on 18 to 20 different community infrastructure projects with different communities I've worked with throughout New England. I like to call myself an infrastructure geek. Like I love systems. I love systems and trying to figure out how they work and how you can both maintain and put them together. So I am going to start by talking about the objectives again, just to kind of go through development and planning, exploring different partnerships. I'd also like to talk a little bit about the role that the residents play during a project, because we're going to talk a lot about the people who can help you, but then we should talk about how the residents play a role, particularly for those of you who have never been through a project. And I like to talk about common challenges, because I think we could probably go on all night and talk about, if you've been through a project, the different challenges that people might face. But I'm going to start by telling you guys my story, because I think it's important to know how this came to me. As you can see, this was the sign of my co-op when I moved in 2007. And we had been a resident-owned community since look at me, I have to think now, 1998. So we were about 9 years in when I came into the community. I had no idea what I was really getting into. I knew my husband-to-be was buying a home when I met him. And I moved in here and was pretty excited to find out that we were going to be part owner. And it wasn't long before I became, someone knocked on my door and said, "Would you like to become our park secretary? We hear you work for a law office." And I was like, "I think so." And then as I got my foot in the door on the board of directors, it was constantly, we were talking about what was going on with challenges. We had failing sewer lines. My first indication of this was a Sunday morning when I woke up and I went into my bathroom and I looked in my tub and I thought there were leaves in my tub. And then I went to flush the toilet and everything in my house backed up with sewage. And of course, you can imagine in my surprise, I had no idea that that could happen. And what I found out was that we had Orangeburg pipes in the ground and they were collapsing all around my home. So We were paying essentially $3,000 every time we had to call Roto-Rooter out to get into our manholes to clean out these sewer pipes, and they were all backing up in, you can guess, at my yard. So that was my first assessment that something was wrong. The second one was my husband brought up our first annual budget. He said, we pay our own water and sewer bills. And he said, why are we budgeting for $8,000 to $10,000 of water a year? Who's paying for that water? And what it was we were paying that in lost water. We had times where we had 1 million gallons. We had a master meter at the front of the community, and the town would read that meter and then subtract all the homes, and what was ever left was charged to the park. And we had that much water, $8,000 to $10,000 a year we were paying in water bills. And of course, we have the ever famous, anyone here ever heard of a gray out, when half your home has power, half the home doesn't? So we were dealing with a lot of that. And every year our costs were going up. Every year our rent was increasing. Every year I was saying, how much longer? And what happened to me was I kept going to board meetings and saying, tell me the history, what has been done to date? And everybody was kind of scratching their head saying, well, we tried this, it didn't work. And I was saying, we have to try something else, because nobody can live with that. And everybody agreed with me, right? That anxiety living in a home and when your infrastructure is failing is crazy. So I'm sure you can relate to that. And hopefully if you've done some work, you can also relate to how good it feels once you've accomplished getting over that. But literally, I moved in 2007, and every year our rent was increasing until we did our project. And we started in 2010, but the first 5 years that I was here, our rent went up every single year, at least $10 to $20. And then I finally, for me, the breaking point was my husband's boss came to visit and dropped something off, and he came in, he said, excuse my pun, but he said, hey, what's the poop paper doing all over your lawn? And apparently the sewer had burst up into the yard and there was toilet paper floating on my lawn. And we were just kind of like, okay. And I'm the type of person who likes to take action, and I finally just had been on the board long enough to say, look, we need to do something different. And to be honest, we had a really good technical assistance provider. Her name is Angela Romeo. You may have heard of her by now. She was pretty new to the business, but she came in and she was a spitfire, and she kept saying, well, if you want to make change, you got to take steps. So she said one day at a meeting, she said, you could do something about that, and you could apply for grants, and you could try to take a look at your into your mortgages for the community and see if you can put together a major project that would replace all of the things that are failing. And I thought she was full of what. And I said, well, I need you to show me how to do that. I have no idea. And basically the first thing she said, well, the first step is you need to figure out exactly what it is that you need, right? So I tell folks that I work with all the time that there's really 2 different stages of major projects. Your early stage has everything to do with development and funding. And there are 2 goals in the development and funding stage. And the first one is that you need to identify your full picture and scope of work. And how we did that is we hired an engineer. It was the same engineer who had done the work when we bought the park, did our property conditions. And we had him come out and really take a look at what was going on and give us a scope of work and an estimated cost of what this project might cost. And it was roughly $1 million. And that, to any resident living in a low-income community, you can imagine that number was completely overwhelming to us. And I thought, there's no way, we're never going to find $1 million. And, basically said that Angela said, well, you can look for grants. She said, you can take a look, but remember that it's like, it's touch or go. You may get it or you may not get it. And we actually, in our state, have community development block grant funds available, but they typically get funded to really small rural areas. And we live on the seacoast of New Hampshire, which is a pretty, I would say the income levels are a little bit higher over here. So it was a long shot for us to apply. And the first thing we did was we got some money out to get that feasibility study done, because we actually had gone to the town. That was a big piece of our planning with the engineer. We had gone and we sat with them and we said, how is it that we're paying this much water? Like, why aren't we finding this lost water if there's 1 million gallons? And basically what they told us that water is a challenging life force, and it could go down under the ground. And I didn't believe him then. Today I do believe him, because I've actually heard similar stories. But we went in and we got some money for that. And we actually formed an ad hoc project committee to start working on it. So we knew we had to take some of our folks off of, you know, just their regular duties and said, who here wants to really focus on this work? And while we were doing the feasibility study, we really made sure that they looked really carefully at everything. Like we actually had them do a full study. We didn't just come in and have them sit and say, hey, we need to do water and sewer. We said, we really want you to look around because we don't want to miss anything. And I say this to everyone, but you know, a board really has to be motivated to take steps forward, not sit around and talk about problems and really get mired down in the direction of what's going wrong. It took probably, like I said, it took us a lot of time and a lot of meetings to really figure out that we had to take some type of action because we were just bleeding money left and right, and our residents were not very happy. And the second goal was we had to find that funding, right? So it's not an easy task. And I always say this, like I tell every group I work with, and when I say, how can I help? They say, can you find us some money? It's a famous last word is, you know, it's great when you find programs that support the kind of community that we live in. I think telling folks that, you know, I always tell folks this, that, you know, you have to show that you're planning for the future in order for someone to give you some support. So you never want to go out into the world when somebody becomes a resident community thinking that this grants are going to be your answer. You have to really think logistically that any privately owned community is not going to get these grants. So they are a nice resource, but they're definitely not the only way. We were super fortunate. We were fourth in a line of a round of CDBG funding where the first two that were funded actually had to drop out, and we were funded by default. So we were able to obtain $500,000 from CDBG. I mean, we were elated. We could not believe it. But that gave us half of our money, and then we had to figure out where to get the other half. And we were able to go through and take a look. I had no idea then of what liquidity and equity that our mortgage held, because we had already been a co-op for 9 years. And we knew at the time that our interest rate was a little higher than maybe the average. And we didn't realize that we could actually refinance and re-amortize our loan for the full amount. And as long as our co-op appraisal appraised for the amount of money we needed and the limit and the equity, which the value had gone up, the bank was willing to loan us the other $500,000. And it was, I will tell you this, that our loans today from our mortgage are 7.25%. And if you know anything about rates right now, I'm going to tell you that in 2011, that was a good rate. Today, our bank is actually, we're about to refinance again at a 5%. So interest rates can make a huge difference. Refinancing is opportunistic to really take a look if you have something major going on. And we were able to really jump out of the gate. We could not believe it. And in order to take out that extra money, our rent had to increase $20. And so we were able to get I'll tell you in a minute, a $1.2 million project done for $20 a month. It's a pretty major. And you know, we had our financing all lined up. We were pretty excited. We had no idea what we were about to encounter. I think some of it I went through just pretending I knew what I was doing, and I really had no idea. I'll be honest with you guys, I didn't even know what an engineer did when I was told we needed an engineer. I had no idea what role they would play. So I always tell one of my claims to fame now is I have a worksheet I'd be willing to share with you guys. I have a worksheet I love to share. It's called What Makes a Community Project Ready? Because I can tell you that there's nothing worse than going into an infrastructure project and having a board of directors that's maybe not ready to tackle the work that's in front of them. Nod your head, Natividad. If you are not ready to tackle a project, it's already going to be exhausting. But I tell people that your board needs to be dedicated. They need to be working together. They need to all, as much as possible, be on the same page. They need to be having board meetings. It sounds silly, but they need to be showing up to board meetings. I tell people they need to have their documents in place. They need to have signatory resolutions. If they've appointed a committee for a project, they can actually appoint that that committee to be temporary signers. They need to have the code of ethics. They need to understand procurement. They need a lot of that stuff in place. And they need bylaws that actually, especially if they're applying for funding, that actually are up to the ROC USA standards, which I'm only saying that in some groups in New Hampshire, they have very old and outdated bylaws that don't have like even the low income language in there. The board needs to be willing to meet and have member meetings, understanding that the members need to be called and often empower the board to take on, it's the members that actually have to encumber the grants and the loans. So often throughout an infrastructure project, there are many member meetings, and it's a pretty, the communication practice has to be pretty frequent. It needs to be, people need to be prepared that, hey, we're going to send biweekly updates. We're going to have a Facebook page. We're going to use social media. We're going to use texting trees, whatever. And members need to be prepared that they're going to need to engage, because there's nothing worse than trying to get something funded and not having your quorum show up to a meeting. But I always say that change drives engagement, right? So if your members know that you're doing something positive, it's a really good time to grasp that and take them away. Take them down the road with you towards some positive stuff. I have to say this very loud and clear. It's really important that you have to know which members are going to be a pain point. And I'll give you a couple examples in my community. We have Smokey, who's 90 years old. I think he's going to outlive all of us, but Smokey is involved with every contractor in the park. If there's a contractor here, he's down in the pit with them. And, we know early on we have to tell people, hey, make sure he stays off the work site. You need to know that if there's people that are really private and protective, they may have some challenges when people have to start digging up their lawns. We had one woman actually throw herself on the ground in front of an engineer when he tried to pull her bushes out. We were like, oh dear God. And members really need to be subtly prepared for that. Major projects are chaotic and there's change coming. And I love to say, like, invite them into the change. Don't invite them into the problem. Let them know that this is for the better. Wait till you see what's on the other side of this, right? It's like not about, oh, this is going to be challenging. And that just a reminder that members need to know that they're empowering you guys to do that work. And they're, sometimes if you can get them to understand that they're making the change, it's all for the best. And I always said, I was part of the project committee in my community. And that committee was really the ones that really sat down with the engineers and sat down. We interviewed 5 different engineering firms, and we picked the one that we felt we could relate to. But, we didn't anticipate that everybody on the board was going to have that time to commit. We really chose carefully. We chose 3 people that said, yep, I'm going to make this work. And the board was able to empower our committee to be signers for project documents, so we didn't have to keep running them back and forth to the board. And then as a committee, we would come and we would actually report out to the board at a meeting, any updates on the project. And often I always say that the project committee, they're the liaisons to residents, engineers, and construction staff. So, we were the ones that when the construction finally started, that the contract supervisor actually knew that there was one of 3 of us that he could contact in any situation. So really, like, this is kind of during planning, these are the things this is what's going to get you ready for an infrastructure project. If you have your planning done, you have your funding in place, the next step is what else do we need before we execute this project? And then you're going to move into design and construction. And I had no idea I thought, oh, we have our money, we're ready to go. When's the contractor coming? I had no idea that there was this whole phase of designing the actual documents that need to go out to bid. This may not come into play if the community's doing a smaller project with all of their own money, but in most cases, anytime you either have grant funding or a construction loan from a bank, they're going to make sure that you have very well laid out design plans. You can't really just put a scope of work together and put it out to a public bid. It actually has to have a set of plans, and most time it's bid on competitively. And if you plan your projects well, the timing for design can fall over the winter time. So, obviously you're not going to do a lot of construction. this is a really advantageous time to, again, engage your members and prepare them about what's going to happen. Because a lot of them are saying, whatever happened to that money we got for the infrastructure project? They don't realize that there's a whole other work going on behind the scenes. I'll tell you this, we hired an engineer firm that was fantastic to work with for our major project. And they were not the engineers that did our feasibility study. We went with somebody completely different that was much more experienced in major projects. But one of the things that we did really run into was that once the design got underway, they brought in an electrical inspector that said, no way, these plans, this original scope of work is not what they need. And we actually had to go back to the bank for $160,000 more because our electric, and you know what? It worked. We didn't even need to, the bank was like, no problem. We had it in that equity. The appraisal gave us that wiggle room that we were able to get. But it scared us for a little bit, we thought. So we thought when we were under there, when the engineer actually convinced us to say, hey, if you're going to do your electrical, you should also put all your phone and cable underneath the ground. So we did that too. We went full fold. We just kept getting excited and waiting for the other shoe to drop that we were doing. And up in the corner, I'll show you guys some pictures at the end. That's just one of the construction crew. Once you get into construction, we had to hire the lowest bidder. I'll be honest with you, that was really a tough one to chew because there were people in our community that had this company had a reputation in town for not being the best construction crew, but we had no choice. We were told as long as they weren't disqualified somehow. In the long run, it all worked out. We built a great relationship with this company, but we did decide to have on-site engineering staff during major construction on a daily basis. We wanted to make sure we had that oversight, and we actually had it in our construction budget. So and that requires, so once you go into construction, it's kind of like you're pressing go. And we went under weekly construction meetings with all parties involved. The funny story is they were in my house, so I had kittens at the time, and I used to tease everyone was coming over to play with the kittens. And then this is where you really need frequent resident updates for schedule and changes. And a lot of people get frantic during this stage. Well, how will I know? Well, how will I know I can't park my car on the road? And how I know the road is going to be blocked? And this is why you have experienced contractors and experienced engineers. It was almost seamless. They would kind of go out the night before and they would let the people in the houses that were going to be impacted, or they would work with us. And there was a site supervisor for a site supervisor for the construction crew and and the engineer inspector that would all go out and knock on doors. So we didn't really have to do a lot of that. There were seasonal challenges. We had one area that it did nothing but rain and nothing but mud was everywhere. And then we ended up going into construction a little later in the fall than we had hoped. And we ended up having to close down the site and then reopen in the spring. So we went a whole winter with unpaved roads and a plow season. And I always tell people, expect the unexpected. Like, there's nothing in a construction project that's, the engineer may show you a projected schedule. I always just shake my head. I really say that it all depends on a lot of things. I'm in New England where you hope they don't hit ledge in the ground when they dig. Because it's more, I will say during the construction phase, they're doing the project aligned with the budget. And if there's a change, they get these jobs and sometimes they call for change orders and there's no money. And I tell people, always, always, always anticipate that you will need contingency in your budget for unseen things. The last thing you want to do is have to go look for money in the middle of a project or have to take a shortfall. Unexperienced engineer would tell you that you need 10% contingency, and I like to say 20. I think in a manufactured housing community, I tell people all the time, we actually towards the end of our project ended up having all new heating tape put on every home, and the person that was putting the heating tape on would not do it unless he was able to change out all the water lines onto every home, because he didn't want the liability. So we ended up, and believe it or not, in bulk, that cost $230 per home. It was worth it. Everybody got new water lines. Everybody got new heat tape, except for 2 that backed out and said, "Don't touch my." And I'm sure you know what I mean. So again, the common challenges, you know, the resident challenges. I see it all the time. Lack of engagement. Residents who get angry. We have residents. I've worked on community projects where residents are like, "I don't want government money." You know, it's like, okay. And just really, like I said, invite them to the change. Don't invite them to the problem. Residents are constantly worried that their lots are going to be disrupted. When are they coming? I have a garden. I have these flowers. What's going to happen? Residents who like to hang out on work sites. We have a lot of that here. Residents who just want to disrupt, just to disrupt. And again, it was really challenging. One of the things to keep in mind is that when you're under construction, anybody who's looking to sell the home, it was really challenging for us to get any homes to sell in here while we were under a major construction project. So it's something to consider. And in the world of financing, some of the challenges that folks might come across is that, you know, grants are challenging. We actually, I didn't mention this, but we actually did apply for our CDBG twice. We went to 2 rounds. The first one we got denied. There's a lot of paperwork. We had to hire a grant administrator. There was a lot of back and forth emails. I was pretty new to even Rock then. I had no idea what half of it was, and it was a lot for me to take in. That's when we really leaned on the support of the technical assistance provider for help there. Pricing, again, can disrupt your plans. Like sometimes, I know you hear it, one engineer will give you a cost estimate, and then all of a sudden COVID happens and the cost of material goes up and 30% more down. And this is why I say plan well for contingency. Pay requisitions, you know, if you draw down grant funds, it's really every invoice you get isn't like an invoice for work. It takes a lot of maneuvering, and it usually has to pass between parties to make sure all the work is done to par and signed off on. And you know, another financing challenge, and this can relate to the resident challenges, is often when people say, "Oh, $1 million for that? My guy up the road will do it for $750." You know, I think people have to understand that when you do, it is grant funded, people will submit a higher bid, because oftentimes there are pieces of most federal grant programs that require certain caveats, such as they have to pay higher wage rates, which is called Davis-Bacon wage rates. They have to maybe follow the American steel. It means they have to buy all of their materials here in America. So it does drive up the cost. I always tell people, though, free money is still free money. And then there's again, partner challenges. You know, I've worked with communities that have had an engineer that kind of took on the project all gung-ho, couldn't wait to help a community, but then got overwhelmed with this other work and really doesn't respond well. You really have to manage your engineer is your right hand, and you will have to manage them well. I also say that some partner, you know, as a provider myself, I would say oftentimes people misunderstand what the TA's role is in it. You know, they often think that the TA role is kind of managing the project, when basically they're not. We'll get into that in a minute. Board and committee turnover, right? Like been in the middle of a project and half your board resigns because there's an argument. I say partner challengers meeting abutters. Just keep in mind that, you know, when you go out to projects and you get things done through the town, they often have to notify abutters, and a lot of times they get upset about the construction going on. Town code enforcer, same thing. If you get a good guy, you're lucky. Sometimes they'll come in. I had one project I was working with, a group, a septic project, and it took this guy 4 weeks to come inspect an open septic replacement. So this contractor waited for 4 weeks to get him to be able to close that up. And another partner challenge is sometimes if you get a grant funded project, they want you to put a sign up front touting that you use their money. And sometimes it's something that people just don't like to have. This is our war zone. These are all pictures from our construction project where you can see they were digging up. You can see the boulders in the road. I don't have a picture of Smokey sitting in the pit. Actually, that's not him behind the truck. You would almost think it is, but there were days where he was actually going over to the hole. The man can barely walk, and he would be trying to help the guys out of the ditch. I'm like, oh God, he's gonna fall. But yeah, so it was quite the work. Again, I just want to snapshot to some key partnerships. I think every group should have these partnerships lined up to have, I would say, the TA provider. I always like to tell people that I say, I can help with the project if you want me to, and usually they're expecting me to, but I think what we have to bring to the table is the experience to draw from other projects. I've sat in so many construction calls and talked with so many engineers, and I'm able to enlighten them a little bit about the caveats of how manufactured housing parks are so much different than any other project they've worked on. Like how many times have you said, oh, well, they don't think about things like skirting, right? Like they're going to dig under a home and they forget like that skirting it needs to be put back on, and it needs to be put on the correct way, or slabs under the home that need to be cut into. We often have CTAPs also often have connecting to any funding sources and can also help run financial pro formas. That was my nightmare. Angela would come and hand us this big pro forma that would show us where all our money was coming. We'd all just go right to the rent and say, okay, we're good now that I understand it. But they can kind of help you figure out, how to take a look at refinances. Is there any potential there? What does that look like? The TA provider can also be a motivator and ball roller. I always tell people, if I'm involved in a project and I've taken on that contracted role to be a project support, that it's my job to make sure everybody's connecting, right? So if I see an email I tell the engineers, always make sure you include me, and I'm making sure that the right people are being connected throughout the process. And I just want to mention that typically that is, in our realm anyhow, that support for construction project is above and beyond the typical TA contract. So we have it's a different level of service, but it's something that we do offer. An engineer, like I said, it sounds kind of funny. I really had no idea until we went to a project, like the importance of an engineer in construction. I had no idea that they were going to be able to help you form relationships and ask 18 million questions and do your design work and really dive in deep to your community. I mean, I am actually still friends with one of our engineers today. We actually went to Boston to see a show together. Like, they became good friends of ours. They basically lived in our neighborhood for a good year and a half. They can help with all the stuff you need. Sometimes they are project managers and site supervisors. And oftentimes you might have a separate project manager. Some grant fund, I know in Vermont, when they use CDBG, they actually have to hire a project manager. In one case, that was us, and that'll probably be the last time that is us. It was a little bit above and beyond. And oftentimes the engineer will be the site inspector. Sometimes it'll be somebody else, and they can also help with when I say interviewers, I mean grant funded. We actually had to have somebody come out here and interview the workers to make sure they were being paid adequately. So again, back to those caveats of a grant, that's why sometimes grant funded projects cost a little bit more. And again, a couple other, there's a variety of things you might see. Again, I think great partnerships, your local town or city office and public works people, we kiss their butts, and I do mean that logically. Like, we went in and basically our start to get that CDBG was, hey, we're trying to help ourselves. Do you have any advice for us? It wasn't, hey, and they were thrilled to do whatever they could to help us, knowing that we were going to help improve the community as a whole. And again, depending on all of your project funding requirements, it might be lending requirements and needs of your community, you might see a variety of these different partnerships. And this is my sign today. This is our community sign. I would say we actually got this right before we started our project. Much different from the one you saw at the beginning. But I will tell you that the long-term impact of that major project was our rent hasn't changed since that project. Our final increase at the end of the project, our rent went up to $345. It is still $345 today. We were able to use our capital funds moving forward to do infill in the park, bringing in more income. We had a couple vacancies during the project. Once we were done, we didn't need to worry. We actually were able to work on bringing our own homes in and marketing them and selling them. And we've actually made that a very successful revolving thing here on our own accord. And our next project is a community center. And I actually, on the 10th of next month, have a membership meeting to convince everybody if that, with that little garage is behind there, we're gonna tear that down. I had another feasibility study done to explore that potential. And I bring that up to say that once we went through that major project and we realized the planning and funding and then execution, we've really been able to use that process for almost anything we've done. And our community, we actually had somebody at a funding event at the Community Loan Fund actually come up and say, we walk by your neighborhood every day and we just cannot believe the changes we've seen in the last 10 years. I mean, it's really amazing. I mean, we have people call every day trying to get in here. And this is just a picture of like our infill project, the same thing. You know, we had an older home, it was pretty bad shape, and we were able to, with our own money, figure out our funding plan to buy that home from the seller, remove it, site a new one, and turn around and sell it, the one on the right. You know, we had our own mini construction project. We had the planning and the funding, and then we put the home in, and we were able to sell that home and just about break even. So, you know, we've done that now, I think 4 times. Here's just a really good picture of that home on the corner. And if you look at, there's a rainbow there. But I mean, those, you know, you'll see the new roadways. I wish I had kind of a before, but I mean, the change in our community has been tremendous over the years. And it's all because we figured out how to take action and really just move forward. Remembering, again, the partnerships that we need and the process that we need really all worked out. So that is what I have. And I thought we would take a little bit of time. I don't know what time it is. Oh, we did good. To talk about just reflections or any questions that anybody has. Before, I thought we'd do a little fun breakout exercise. If somebody can I don't know who's the host of the meeting, but if you could make me the host, Emily, that would be cool. Because I was going to break us out maybe into, maybe I could break us out. Let's see. Any questions right off the bat? Is anybody still with me?
We're here.
We're here.
I'm here.
So no questions whatsoever, or I know Park Plaza, you're pretty familiar with infrastructure, so. Cool. Well, why don't we take this last little bit of time then? What I would like to do is, I think, so how many, so we have, who's on? We have 1 on the phone or 2 on the phone?
I think we just have 1 on the phone.
Why don't we do that? So I was going to break us out into groups actually and see if we wanted to maybe talk a little bit about partnerships and common challenges for a minute. And let me just see. So maybe, what do you guys think of that? Would you rather just talk about your experience with infrastructure, or would you rather break out into groups and maybe talk about, I know there's only a couple of you on here that don't have a tremendous amount of experience with projects.
I like the idea of sticking together as a group and talking about it. But
Great. So what are some of the partnerships that you guys have, either that we talked about tonight or that you've seen of your own? Like, what are some of those projects? What are some of those partnerships that you've used in your projects?
Well, I'll go first. So pretty much everything that you listed on yours, we did with ours. You did the TA one specifically, and that was extra above and beyond your normal TA use. So with the board meetings on a monthly basis and whatever, you had to use them like a lot for your grant writing, your connections, how to bring in 5 engineers to get down to 1, pulling the board together, all the extra meetings, signatories, making sure all that happened. Paperwork with Rock USA. Rock USA was a big person that played into our infrastructure, because all of a sudden you would get an email and said, I need you guys to sign this right now and you need to send it over right now, that kind of thing. So then you're scrambling to find another signatory real quick. Hey, is anybody home? So once you get all of those 2 items, 3 actually, rock, TA, and engineer, you get all those in place, then you keep going. Then you have the city. And the TA providers did a lot of that connection as well to get all the permits done. Your engineer plays a big part in that. You are kind of sitting on the edge of your chair on a daily basis, and everybody else, luckily for us, was doing the major part of the work, the funding part and the engineer part, all the big major key players, figuring out the times of when they were going to shut off each street, because we did it in sections. I don't know if you did that the same way, where you just turned off a street worth of stuff in a section. So spending the night inside the office and having to stay awake for a long time and then go to work the next day so that you could turn on the gas, or you could turn on the sewer lines, or you could turn on the water. There was so much involved. And being able to connect your community with the people who were actually on site doing the work, because some of the construction workers, they connected with the community to take the garbage cans all the way out to the main street so that we could get the garbage out. And same with the mail. We had to put a fake row of mailboxes along the main street. So we had to do that and then get everybody out there so they could get their mail, because you're talking a 10-foot hole right in the middle of the street. So how do you get everybody parked? How do you get everybody's groceries in? Some of the construction workers even helped carry groceries in. And so I came home one day and I was like, oh my goodness, I didn't know my street was next. I didn't even know how to get in.
Yeah. It happens so quickly, doesn't it?
Yeah, it did. It so did. And so you didn't have that, sometimes you didn't have that time to connect with them. So we were like handing out paper after paper every day. Here's what's going to happen next. Here's what's going to happen next. And so I don't know how frustrated or upset any of the residents were, because it seemed like they all managed to make it through and they were kind about it and stuff, but maybe they had some bad in the background. We didn't hear about it, but yeah, so it would have been nice to know that part. How are your residents panning out during
Yeah.
major
How about Marjorie, have you done any infrastructure projects where you are?
Excuse me. Yeah, we've done some water and sewer. We did one of our roads, I believe it was like 2 years ago. And then last summer we did a partial one of our other rows. And the first one that had quite a bit more problems, I think it was more so the time of the year that it was done. It was like finished in probably like the first week or 2 of November. And then you're dealing with the frozen stuff and things not being completely done completely right with the stuff. And then that was the year that around Christmas time that we had the, was it like the -70 below wind chills and all that. So we were dealt with quite a few, I want to say at least 4 out of 5. I mean, 4 out of like 15 homes that were dealt with the frozen pipes, and everybody else wasn't, but it was having to deal with that. But thankfully, one of the guys on our board was pretty knowledgeable with the different stuff, so people got it done. And then we ended up going back on that company and saying, you said this, 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 and this. It wasn't taken care of properly, and so then they had paid the bills for those things with the frozen pipes and stuff.
Yeah, challenges. Like I said, expect the unexpected. That's what I tell people. And yeah, I mean, you can plan very well and you can still end up, but I mean, I always say that it's better to go in. And I'll say, I think it's interesting, Natividad, what you said about, you know, being the one to run stuff back and forth. It's really important that you do try to identify at least 1 or 2 in your community that are like Natividad, that can just get it done when it needs to get done. And, you know, that's, you know, you can do it with that type of attitude, but it is a lot. How about Bobby and Danita? Have you guys done any work at all? I know you're fairly new.
Well, I've lived in the park for about 8 years now, so we right away when we actually first purchased the community, we found out that the city wanted to put us on city water right away. And it was new to us. We luckily found out. And that project was the biggest pain in the butt ever. Just they kept putting it off when they were going to run city water through, because the actual main water pipe had to go right down the middle of our community. So it took a lot of lawyers. We had to meet with lawyers, the city lawyers, or the town lawyers, I should say, and engineers and their construction guys to get exactly what we wanted going through our community. Luckily, we found out that most of the ley lines coming into the homes had been updated or replaced. So we didn't have too many of the main lines at all that needed to be replaced. But that was the biggest headache, because right before they started the project, our well started going down, and we weren't going to put money into it if they were going to put us on main water, city water. So it just kept getting harder and harder to get the town to move to get on their projects, so we didn't have to keep getting sand in our system and through our lines. Even today, we still have sand coming into some of our homes whenever they flush the systems. So there's sand still creeping around within our water system somewhere. And we are currently dealing with roads, because they had to put a whole new main road in through like I said, it went right down the middle of our community. And we just replaced the one exit entrance, and the person had farm equipment come down it and wrecked our exit and entrance there. So we have lawyers on that one now too. So our lawyers have actually been playing a big part of our whole infrastructure, trying to get negotiations done and trying to figure out.
Wow.
Because it's been just nothing but headaches. And that water one was the biggest one so far, headache wise, getting everything done there.
And how long ago was that?
4 years ago.
Wow.
It was literally right when we purchased the community. 3 years ago, right when we purchased the community, they were supposed to put it in that September, and we purchased in December, finally signed the papers in December, but we were the reason they held it off for a whole year. And then they came in by next September when our pumps started going down.
Wow.
And they didn't finish until November. It was a pain. But our sewers and everything are fine. That was nice.
Does anybody have any upcoming projects they're working on?
No. During our project, when we did ours, I forgot to say that we also had the I'm Home conference here in Minnesota. It was based here. So we had 2 bus loads of people from the conference come and take a tour after it rained. And I had specifically said, please tell everyone to wear rain boots and don't wear high heels and don't wear dressy clothes, because we are mud. Because we were digging. So they were able to come and actually see what it was like, including state representatives, to see what it was like to actually do this type of infrastructure in a community such as this. So that was a big deal in starting to turn stuff around with the government here to pass some bills. So that was a big deal.
And you were under construction?
100% under.
Oh, that's interesting. Because I'm Home came to my community one year, and Angela was the CTAP, and she called. Well, she had asked me at a board meeting, "Hey, would you be willing to talk to a group of people I'm gonna bring by about your project?" And and how you put this together. And I said, yeah, sure. And I totally forgot about it. And I was coming in from work, and there's a big giant tour bus in the front of my community. And I went, oh my God. She didn't tell me that a whole bus full of people were coming, and that there were the town was there. I'm like, oh my God, the select board was all there. I had no idea. I really just like pulled it out. It was pouring rain. We're all in umbrellas, and I'm sitting there. And that's actually how I met Julie Eads. And it's a funny story is that 2 weeks later is when I got the call, and they said, we want you to come work for us. I thought they were kidding. And here I am.
I have a question for you.
Bonnie has a question.
You said that you charge rent $345 is all?
Yeah, well, that is our rent, $345 a month, but that does not include sewer and water. So we all have individual bills to the town. So that's, yeah. So
Still
that's
cheaper.
still cheaper.
That's
Well,
We're at 260.
Then how many trailers do you have in your park?
so we don't have trailers. We have 52 homes.
Oh, 52 homes. It's
Yeah.
52
Yeah. So we have 52 lots. And I will say, what year did you guys become a co-op?
2011.
Okay, so we became a co-op in 1998. So mind you that the cost of real estate back then was a lot lower. So that has probably a lot to do with it. I'm sure you probably paid a pretty penny more for your community. I think we bought ours for about $850,000.
4.3 million.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
that's probably a big reason why the difference the older co-ops typically do. And this is part of that conversation that if you've seen the new rent study that shows that resident-owned co-ops will actually, that they stay, I think it was 0.9% on an annual basis versus like a 3.89. So there is a big gap that private park rents are going up higher and higher. The good news is wherever yours is, it should remain stable, especially after all the work you guys have done.
We held off our rent for 3 years. We didn't have to do any increases at that time. And we did do no increase during that infrastructure, but we did do a $6 increase during the storm shelter. But we have had to do it because of infill. So we went from, at one point, we were paying $285. We're at $528 right now, but we also give them a $20 credit for being on time. So for us and being this close to the city, it's still low for us.
Super low.
Yeah.
Jeannie, I was wondering, oh, I didn't mean to cut you off.
You're good.
I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more, because you touched on infill, and that was the session last night, and I think most people were on that call. But you talked about how infill was something that happened after that infrastructure project went in. Can you talk a little bit more about that and sort of what the program was around that? And
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's another, again, I always say it's part of our story, and I love to talk about it. So we had 2 homes, we had 2 vacant sites during the project, and it was probably a godsend if I look back on it, because we needed a place to park construction equipment, because we have one of those communities, our homes are pretty close together. So afterwards we realized that we actually began to not spend our capital money because we had done all of our work and that account had begun to grow. We had sat down again with Angela Romeo as we put a committee together to look at it. And what we did was we ran a pro forma on an individual basis of what it would cost us to use those funds to purchase a home from a retailer, put it onto a lot, and then market it to sell it to recoup what we put into it. And we were able to convince our lender. We do not have Rock USA as a lender. We have a traditional bank, and they were willing to let us do that. And we did it a little apprehensively the first time. We weren't sure how it was going to work, but it worked out wonderfully. So we kind of, once we recouped the proceeds from the one home after marketing, we went right to the next one. And so first it was 2 vacant sites. And then what happened with the home that I showed you the photo was that a lot of folks were coming in here that was a 1963 home that had, the floors were falling out of the middle of it. And what we had were a lot of contractors that wanted to come in and rehab it. And we were apprehensive about that. And we thought, well, I wonder if we could, the cost of homes were beginning to increase in our area. So we just on a whim said, hey, what if we offer the seller the right, an amount to sell it to us? So we bought the home, had it removed. And again, we ran just ran a business plan that just showed that we had to take it to the members. We had to say, we want to spend X amount of dollars. We're going to buy the home. We're going to remove it and put a new one in. And we've done 2 vacant lots. We've done 2 sites, and we're toying around with the idea of trying to help folks with replacing pre-76 homes next. You know what I mean? Like, it's like kind of one of those things that once you start getting down the road of like how to really organize a project well and execute it and manage it and then move on to the next, you just keep thinking. And the way we're thinking about doing that is getting some funds to get an RV that folks could stay in while they were able to replace their home. So, I mean,
I have a question. How much was the home that you brought in, the newer ones?
I don't think it's fair for me to say, because you have to remember in New Hampshire that manufactured housing is titled and deeded property. So it's real estate here versus chattel.
Right. We know that. We're thinking the same.
Okay.
We have a whole big mess going on right now.
I can only tell you the last one that we did, the home that we bought, total cost us about $80,000 site to finish, and we sold it for $109,000.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And actually, if you want to know how real estate's working on the East Coast right now, that gentleman lived here for a year. He had lost his wife and decided to move back to his friends, and he just sold it 2 weeks ago for $112.
Wow.
So it didn't even depreciate. He made money.
Yeah. We can do 100,000 out here too, but not in our community.
And this is a single wide 2-bedroom, 2-bath.
Yeah, we're in the 30,000 plus range is what we're looking at right now. So.
Well, you know your market, right? So, I mean, it's a matter of, it's the cost. I mean, it also costs us 85 site to finish. You could probably get it for a lot less. I mean, if we really weren't in it to make money. It just happened to be that was the market. And we did hire a realtor to market the home. We did not do it ourselves because we actually, we're a Fannie Mae eligible community. We're one of 11 in the state of New Hampshire that was part of a program because of our financial condition.
Right.
We have access to really affordable rates if people have decent credit. So that's a really beneficial thing to us, because when people come in, they can get attractive financing. But it isn't easy if it's an older home. Those older homes still, even with, granted, we do have the welcome home product, but that's a 9% interest for folks. And to me, that's really steep when folks are working hard. So
you guys have it made out there in New Hampshire with a lot of extra stuff that we don't have here.
Yeah. Keep in mind, I work in Maine and Mass, so I do see the other side of that. And I often tell people, what I'm hoping to do someday when somewhere my capacity frees up, I would love to see us work on more legislation to get more real estate property across the country.
Yeah.
It does make a big difference. It makes a big difference. Like, nobody can come in here and buy a home without our permission. So we never have that, the home got sold in the middle of the night thing going on. Do you guys have that when you all of a sudden the bill of sale changed between parties and the park didn't even know about it? So
it can.
Yeah.
It can if you're not watching. You got to really pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I will tell you that I drove into a community in Maine on vacation because it was raining. It's the only reason I did. And they had signs posted in the community, to live here, you must be screened for membership. I was like, screened for, tenancy. I was like, oh, that's really good. I took pictures of it. I thought it was a really unique idea to let people know coming in, don't just buy a home here, because you can't live here unless you've been approved. But so any other questions about it? Did I answer your questions on infill, Emily?
You did. Thank you. You touched on it. So I appreciate you fleshing that out.
Yeah. And I think also with infill, I will say that I think some communities, I'm working with a community in Maine right now that has built a relationship with a smaller retailer that is aggressively looking to fill their sites. Like, as he knows that people are looking for homes, so he's willing to go in and set it up. The challenge there is that he wants 3 months to sell it without rent, but no rent is no rent. So, I think they're on to something. He's actually just put 2 home. They're letting him do 2 at a time. They have 9 vacant sites, and hopefully he can get those sold. So
that would work out here for us because we can sell a home sometimes in a day. That's how bad people want in here. It's just we can't find the homes, and we don't have as many opportunities as you do in your area with funding and those types of things, banks and all of that. So it does get to be hard. Most of the people trying to get in here do have cash. They want to buy something cheap and cash now. So we would really like to fill them with some nicer homes and do that. You know, we let them do 3 months or 6
are you saying that the people are looking for more affordable, like a $10,000 home? Yeah.
Oh, I think the biggest one we've sold was 28,000. The cheapest one we've sold was 2,000. And we also have the opportunity to do giveaways. So if they rehab them and they live in it. So we can do 3 of those, which is really nice because we filled some older homes and the inside of those things are like right out of a magazine. They're just gorgeous.
We do that too.
Yeah. It's a nice way to fill it fast. And now we're using the abandonment law here to get a title on a home so we can get it out of here.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Yeah. I was going to say, you're the right person.
We've done that too, where we've offered them like 2 months off a rent, but you have to take the home as is and make it upstandable that we know what's wrong with it. You have to fix those things.
Yeah. Yeah. I think especially during COVID, I think people are looking for project homes all the time.
They're looking for homes, period.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, I work with some communities that are very opposed to that. They don't want people who aren't going to live in the home there, you know, and I always, I guess it depends on the community you work with. You know, we prefer to have people who are going to come in and they're going to fix it and they're going to live in it versus somebody that's going to fix it up to sell it. So.
Yeah, I don't want somebody to come in and fix it and sell it. It gets iffy, and they could turn around and leave. They could take it and turn around and leave. So I always worry about that. It's too easy to do.
For sure. But I do, Emily, think that infill is very similar to construction and infrastructure. I think, again, it's just really good planning. I think, you know, marketing is important, but don't be afraid of the partners you can build. I'm surprised, Natividad, you don't have a retailer that you're lining up to come in there and site homes.
We have not worked directly with them, and right now we're working with someone who has signed a contract with us for a home, but we've had some not so good. I just can't even get into it right now because I would have to get a lawyer. So
okay, gotcha.
We have 3 sites right now that we're working with this gentleman. He's a broker. Yeah. So it's harder to work with brokers and you got to be on top of them. I've talked to a real estate agent and I'm next going to a dealer because part of the Rock USA classes that we took, those were some of the 3 things they offered up: broker, real estate, and dealer. It's not that easy. And with all the pandemic and all the storms, the houses are not available right now. They're going to the storm areas. So, and that's what we had when we got the ones from North Country Foundation. They wound up going to the storm areas.
Right.
So we're dealing with that issue as far as getting homes, but it's a matter of taking the next step. We told Tom we would like to buy a house and turn around and sell a house. How does that work for us? And what do we need to do to take those steps to do that? And that's part of your infrastructure. Anytime you do some infrastructure and make yourself pretty and workable again, and you have empty lots, that should go hand in hand. Find a way to fill them as you're doing your infrastructure.
One of the NCF staff can answer, but are there revolving lines of credit for that at NCF or anywhere available through Rock USA?
For infill?
Yeah.
No, not currently. That's what we're working on developing.
Yeah, that would be great. It's helpful.
Yeah.
If you don't have the capital yourself, like I said, we did because we had we actually just, again, we spent a few years under construction and a few more years, and our reserve just grew enough. And it was a tight, you know, we took a risk. We took most of our capital money and put it into a home to replace it, but it just seemed to work. And I mean, it's, again, but we also knew that we didn't have any pending major issues, knock on wood, because again, we're 2000, we're almost, 8 or 9 years in, things are already starting to look, we were just saying we still have to do work in the community. Like there's still going to be a time where all the stuff we replaced in 2010 through 12 are going to need to be replaced again. So we can't spend all that money.
Yeah, I think it's like the long-term vision, of doing the infill, doing the infrastructure work, getting a community center. I mean, all of that takes years of work. But it sounds like you guys are realizing it, so you're seeing the benefits.
Yeah, and I will say in our community center, I was really surprised at the cost. I really wanted we want a prefab metal building enough to have member meetings. Anyone want to guess at what that's going to cost us? It's going to have plumbing. It's going to have a bathroom and a kitchen.
And heating and air conditioning?
No, heating, electric heat. How much?
It's like 30,000.
500,000.
No, we're 30,000. No, we're budgeting 250.
Okay.
And I'm hoping to apply for a grant because I'm going to make the cause that we can't provide any resident services and advocacy work without a place to meet. And I'm going to see where I get with that, but I don't know.
That's a good one. I like that.
And but ironically, our lender, because of all of our success, was willing to loan us in escrow a $250,000 hold that we can draw from as much as we need to, all or none. And we're refinancing our mortgages, and our rent is not even going up to do that.
Good for you. That's great news.
So again, I just want to remind you that don't forget that you're a commercial business. Your mortgage is equity. And I know it seems like you say, oh, we should be looking to pay that down. But I mean, just remember that the value of your park is what your net worth is. And we're going from 7.25% to 5.25%, and it's freeing up so much interest that we were going to pay that we're able to pay for our community center and its maintenance. I know that sounds crazy, but that's how much equity can be drawn. And just remember, as values go up across the country, the value of your community also increases.
Jeannie, when you went through the refinancing though, how did you pay for sort of the piece, didn't you have to do like an additional property condition report and all of that kind of stuff? Was that coming out of the initial loans to do the refinance effort, or your lender didn't require that?
The only thing they're requiring is an appraisal and an environmental, which is about $8,000, but we're going to approve that with the refinance, and she's going to roll them. We can either pay up front or roll the costs. And there is a fee to refinance. It's $40,000, but in the long run, if you do the years to pay back, if you can run a refinance pro forma to show that. And again, like she said, the only thing we have to make sure is that our park appraises. And we already have that equity, but right now we just had an assessment that the value of our park doubled in even our tax assessment. I mean, the values of this is across the country. I mean, if you guys haven't heard yet, like the prices that manufactured housing communities are going up for sale now is absolutely ludicrous. Be happy you bought when you did, because we're seeing them at $100,000 per site. It's
even on Yahoo News. It comes across my news feed all the time. 9 million, blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, oh my gosh, you gotta be kidding me. This is ridiculous. Even with, what's the other place? Capstone or something. So I get a lot of those, and you're just like, wow, we really bought at a good time where we're at.
Yeah. And and again, I mean, who knows what's going to happen in the future, but it just seems like it's all of a sudden these investors have realized the value. And keep in mind, what they're looking at is that our rents have opportunity to go up. So we're resident ownership, thank goodness. And with that, I think we should close because it's 8:15.
Thank you so much, Jeannie.
Thank you,
You're welcome.
Jeannie. That was awesome.
I was glad to be here. I always like to talk to other people across the country. I feel like I'm in Wisconsin tonight, but I'm not.
You don't want to be. You don't want to be here.
Why
come on.
Our COVID cases have gone up so much that people not even to come here.
Yeah.
So
all right,
it's bad.
All right. Any other closing thoughts besides that? I did notice that COVID cases were going up in Wisconsin. Stay home, wear a mask.
Yes, Stay
final
home and
thoughts.
stay healthy.
Thanks for having me, you guys. I really appreciate
Thank
it.
you
Thanks for
so much,
coming.
Jeannie.
Bye.
Yeah, come.
Bye, everyone.